Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Weekly Coder. I'm Chris, and today we are going to continue our Pong Clone tutorial. What we've done so far is we've imported our background, we've imported the paddles, we've created some prefabs, we've created some folders, we've created all these scripts. So now let's go ahead and get into actually programming, right? So we're going to make things happen in this game because right now it's just doing nothing. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it so we can move these paddles around, okay? One of the things that we need to take into consideration when moving these paddles is we have to actually make sure that as we're moving these paddles up and down, that we only allow the player to move within the confines of the actual game board, which is right here and right here. We're not going to allow any left and right movement because that is not Pong. Pong is up and down, right? So we need to find out, we need to have a top bounds and a bottom bounds specified, and we have to check to see if that player is within those limits, okay? And only allow the player to move if he is within those limits. So, easier said than done, right? Actually, no, it's not. It's actually very, very simple. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and jump into the player script, okay? And in our player script, we've got our start and update methods, just like we always do, right? So there are three things that we're going to need. Actually, we're going to do four things, right? We're going to need variables that are going to determine our move speed. We're going to need a variable to store our top bounds, and a variable to store our bottom bounds, and then we want a variable to store our starting position. So let's go ahead and create those. So we'll do public float move speed, and I'm going to go ahead and set that to 8. Let's see, another one, we need a top bounds, and just because I've already done this, I know that the top bounds is going to be 8.3F. Our bottom bounds, because our game is centered, is going to be negative 8.3F. And our starting position, let's use a vector 2. Starting position is going to be new vector 2, and the x, where's our x position? Let's see here, player paddle. X position is going to be negative 13. And our y position is just going to be 0. Okay? So, we are going to go ahead and actually, we're going to set our starting position. So, transform, which is the transform of the game object that the script is attached to, in this case the player paddle, dot local position equals, we're going to cast a vector 3. Oops, that's not how you cast. Vector 3. And we're going to give it starting position. Okay? So that's how we start. So, how do we move the paddle? Well, we have to use the arrow keys, up and down, right? So, we're going to create a method for that. We're going to create a method called check user input. And in that method, we're going to have to define if input get key equals key code dot up arrow, then we are going to move the piece up. Oops. Otherwise, else if input dot get key code dot down arrow, we're going to move the paddle down. Okay. So what we have to check is we have to check to see if, while we're moving up, if we're past the top bounds. So if we've overshot the top bounds, right? So we want to say if transform dot local position dot y is greater than top bounds, okay, then we don't want to allow the player to move anymore, and we want to set the position of the paddle to be the top bound. So we're gonna first say transform dot local position equals new vector 3, and we're going to pass in the x because we're not moving in the x direction, and then we're going to pass in our top bounds and the z-axis because we're not moving along the z. Okay, so that's just going to stay the same. And otherwise, we are going to allow the paddle to move, so we're going to do transform.local position. We're going to increment it, so plus equals vector 2, we can use vector 3 dot up times move speed times time dot delta time. Okay, so move up. Check if we are above our top bounds. If we are, we set the top bounds, and then we are out of this if statement. Otherwise, we continue to move up. Same thing with moving down, except for the opposite, basically the opposite. So we do if transform.local position y is less than bottom bounds. We do transform.local position equals new vector 3. Transform.local position x. Bottom bounds. Transform.local position z. Otherwise, we continue to allow movement in the direction that the player is pressing the button. So transform.local position plus equals vector 2 or vector 3 dot down times move speed times time dot delta time, and that should be that. So let's go ahead and jump back into Unity, and we're going to press play. And now, if you'll notice, nothing happens. Interesting. We forgot something very important. We have to actually call this method. So in the update method, we're going to call check user input. And now we should be good to go. There. Now I can move the paddle up and down. The computer's not smart yet. The computer doesn't have an AI. So for now, while we're testing, we're going to go ahead and just have the computer mimic the player's movement. And by that, all we have to do is open up the computer script and go into the player class, and we're just going to copy everything. There's one change we're going to have to make, and I'll show you. So we're going to copy everything inside the curly bracket, so that's the whole class. I'm going to go into the computer class, go ahead and highlight all this stuff, and paste. And now what we need to do is we need to change the starting position of the computer paddle to 13 because it's on the opposite side of the screen, right? So 13, everything else remains the same. So now we save that, we go back in, press play, and now when we move up, it's the computer and the player paddle are moving together. I don't like the way it's bouncing. It should not bounce. Here's what we got to do. So instead of just saying greater than, we say greater than or equal to, because once we set the position of our transform to the position of the top bounds, it's going to continue to move because it's not greater than, right? So here, let's go ahead and try that again. Oops. That is the wrong way to write that. Greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. You can't do equal to or less than. Alright, so now, go up. Oh, we only changed it in a we only made a change in a computer paddle. That's why. Alright, so greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. Okay, so move up, and we stop. No more bouncing. Down. Okay, everything looks nice and smooth, and I am happy with that. So I'm gonna go ahead and end it here. Okay, and when I come back, actually, I may decide to add another. No, you know what? We will do the next tutorial next week. But yeah, for now, just know that we've got the player paddles moving up and down like they should. The player paddles. It's a player paddle and a computer paddle. So we have them both moving together. We've got the same logic in the computer paddle script as we do in a player paddle script. So they're both moving along the y-axis at the same time. You know, I mean, you could play with this. You could go into the computer paddle and change the move speed, and then if we press play, you can see that, you know, the computer paddle moves just a little faster. And that's one of the ways that we're actually going to start making the game a little more difficult once we get into difficulties, is we're going to slow the computer paddle down a little bit and make it a little slower than the player paddle, so that the player actually has a chance of winning. One of the ways that we can make the player have a chance of winning. There are some other ones that we're going to get into. So that is it for this tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Oh, and if you've got any questions, comments down below. I will see you guys next week.